morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. This is Karen Dubin from Sweet Institute. I am going to be continuing on in our reading of Carl Rogers on Becoming a Person, and I'm going to be starting on page 35, the motivation for change. So much for the relationship. The second phase in my in my overall hypothesis was that the individual will discover within himself the capacity to use this relationship for growth. I will try to indicate something of the meaning which that phrase has for me. Generally, my experience has forced me to conclude that the individual has within himself the capacity and the tendency, latent if not evident, to move forward toward maturity. In a subtle psychological climate, this tendency is released and becomes actual rather than potential. It is evident in the capacity of the individual to understand those aspects of his life and of himself which are causing him pain and dissatisfaction, an understanding which probes beneath his conscious knowledge of himself into those experiences which he has hidden from himself because of their threatening nature. It shows itself in the tendency to reorganize his personality and his relationship to life in ways which are regarded as more mature. Whether one calls it growth tendency, a drive towards self-actualization, or a forward-moving directional tendency, it is the mainspring of life and is, in the last analysis, the tendency upon which all psychotherapy demands. It is the urge which is evident in all organic and human life to expand, extend, become autonomous, develop, mature, the tendency to express and activate all the capacities of the organism to the extent that such activation enhances the organism or itself, or the self. This tendency may become deeply buried under layer after layer of encrusted psychological defenses. It may be hidden behind elaborate facades which deny its existence, but it is my belief that it exists in every individual and awaits only the proper conditions to be released and expressed. The outcomes. I have attempted to describe the relationship which is basic to constructive personality change. I have tried to put into words the type of capacity which the individual brings to such a relationship. This third phase of my general statement was that change and personal development would occur. It is my hypothesis that in such a relationship the individual will reorganize himself at both the conscious and deeper levels of his personality in such a manner as to cope with life more constructively, more intelligently, and in a more socialized as well as more satisfying way. Here, I can depart from speculation and bring in the steadily increasing body of solid research knowledge, which is culminating. We now know that individuals who live in such a relationship, even for a relatively limited number of hours, show profound and significant changes in personality, attitudes, and behavior. Changes that do not occur in matched control groups. In such a relationship, the individual becomes more integrated, more effective. He shows fewer of the characteristics which are usually termed neurotic or psychotic, and more of the characteristics of the healthy, well-functioning person. He changes his perception of himself, becoming more realistic in his views of self. He becomes more like the person he wishes to be. He values himself more highly. He is more self-confident and self-directing. He has better understanding of himself, becomes more open to his experience, denies or represses less of his experience. He becomes more accepting in his attitudes toward others, seeing others as more similar to himself. In his behavior, he shows similar changes. He is less frustrated by stress and recovers from stress more quickly. He becomes more mature in his everyday behavior as this is observed by friends. He is less defensive, more adaptive, and more able to meet situations creatively. These are some of the changes which we now know come in individuals who have completed a series of counseling interviews in which the psychological atmosphere approximates the relationship I described. Each of the statements made is based upon objective evidence. Much more research needs to be done, but there can be no longer any doubt as to the effectiveness of such a relationship in producing personality change. A broad hypothesis of human relationships. To me, the exciting thing about these research findings is not simply the fact that they give evidence of the efficacy of one form of psychotherapy, though that is by no means unimportant. The excitement comes from the fact that these findings justify an even broader hypothesis regarding all human relationships. There seems every reason to suppose that the therapeutic relationship is only one instance of interpersonal relations, and that the same lawfulness governs all such relationships. Thus, it seems reasonable to hypothesize that if the parent creates with the child a psychological climate such as we have described, then the child will become more self-directing, socialized, and mature. To the extent that the teacher creates such a relationship with his class, the student will become self-initiated learner, more original, more self-disciplined, less anxious, and other-directed. If the administrator or military or industrial leader creates such a climate within his organization, then the staff will become more responsible, more creative, better able to adapt to new problems, more basically cooperative. It appears possible to me that we are seeing the emergence of a new field of human relationships, in which we may specify that if certain attitudinal conditions exist, then certain definable changes will occur. Conclusion. Let me conclude by returning to a personal statement. I have tried to share with you something of what I have learned in trying to be of help to troubled, unhappy, maladjusted individuals. I have formulated the hypothesis which has gradually come to have meaning for me, not only in my relationships to clients in distress, but in all my human relationships. I have indicated that such research knowledge as we have supports this hypothesis, but that there is much more investigation needed. I should like now to pull together into one statement the conditions of this general hypothesis and the effects which are specified. If I can create a relationship characterized on my part by a genuineness and transparency in which I am my feelings, by warm acceptance of and prizing of the other person as a separate individual, by a sensitive ability to see his world and himself as he sees them, then the other individual in the relationship will experience and understand aspects of himself which previously he has repressed, will find himself becoming better integrated, more able to function effectively, will become more similar to the person he would like to be, will be more self-directing and self-confident, will become more of a person, more unique and more self-expressive, will be more understanding, more acceptant of others, will be able to cope with the problems of life more adequately and more comfortably. I believe that this statement holds whatever I am speaking of my relationship with a client, with a group of students or staff members, with my family or children. It seems to me that we have here a general hypothesis which offers exciting possibilities for the development of creative, adaptive, and autonomous persons. So end of reading for today and end of chapter. So tomorrow we're going to start with chapter 3, the characteristics of a helping relationship. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your days, and please do join us tomorrow.